I finally landed a bottle of BTAC, but it took me 2 days of hunting and waiting in lines and a miracle draw of a raffle ticket to get it. So what can we do about this? I think I can recommend 3 alternatives for each bottle of BTAC so that you don't have to go through what I did just to get this. Let's go.
I'm your drinking buddy.
All right, drinking buddies. So as we go through it, I'm also going to rank the BTAC bottles as far as my least favorite to favorite, and I will offer you a alternative for each bottle. In fact, I will give a shelf alternative, a bottle that you can buy almost anywhere. I'm going to give you a allocated alternative, meaning a bottle that might be a little bit harder to find, and then I'll give you a unicorn alternative to each bottle. Yes, it's a unicorn, but it's much easier to find than a bottle of BTAC. So we're going to begin with Sazerac 18. It is my least favorite of the lineup, but it is still a really good bottle, and I recommend that, I would still give a pinky for it. So the shelf bottle that I'm going to say is closest to Saz 18 is a little boring, but that's okay. It's going to go ahead and be the regular bottle of Sazerac. That's right. The Sazerac 90 proof is a 6-year-old rye whiskey, same mash bill as Saz 18, just younger. And it's great. It's got a lot of the same flavors that carry over. It's like cherry licorice and, a little bit of a rye spice that's more subtle. It's 51% rye. A little bit of mint, but subtle. That's going to be probably the best recommendation I can give to you. Now, I know in some areas it's hard to find, but in my area, it's a 6-year regular Sazerac rye anywhere. So that's going to be my recommendation for your shelf bottle. As far as an allocated bottle, I'm going to recommend Whistle Pig 12-year. I say this one because it's got the age on it. It's 12 years old, but they also put staves in each one of these. It's going to be an 86 proof rye, so close to that 90 proof point. But since they put these extra wine staves in these barrels to make this, it's going to give it some more extra age to it. This particular one I have here is a Nana's pick. So if you're in Arizona, definitely check out Nana's Kitchen because they always have a really good store picks. Especially if you like tequila. They do a lot of bourbon too, but they do a lot of great tequila. But anyway, yeah, 86 proof, and it's going to have some of those similar flavors because the wine finishes that are on here kind of help with those cherry licorice notes that you get off of the Saz 18, and it's going to have a lot of the oak notes and a lot of the age notes that you're going to get off of the Saz 18. And last up, for a unicorn bottle that you can't get anywhere, but it's easier to find than the BTAC, I'm going to say E.H. Taylor rye. Now that one is I don't have one because I've never even seen it. I've tasted it, but I've never seen it on a shelf. So it's one that I would say is close to unobtainium, but not as hard to find as Saz 18. So E.H. Taylor rye is going to be the same mash bill as the Saz 18. Once again, just younger. Older than the Saz 6-year, most likely. 100 proof, a little higher proof. But yeah, E.H. Taylor rye. And that's going to be my recommendation. So number 4 on the BTAC list, my second least favorite of the BTAC lineup, is going to be Eagle Rare 17. So Eagle Rare 17 is a really unique bottle because it's 101 proof. 17-year-old bourbons don't come around every day. It's going to be hard to find something to compare to, but I actually have 3 bottles that I think I can compare to. One's a shelf, one's an allocated, and one's a unicorn. So it's perfect for my for my shelf bottle. I'm going to say Calumet 15. I know the flavors aren't going to line up perfectly between this and Eagle Rare 17. Nothing is going to line up perfectly with Eagle Rare 17. It's a unique unicorn. It's a unique bottle. It's 17-year-old Buffalo Trace bourbon. Their low rye mash bill is unique. It tastes like Eagle Rare 17, but the closest you can get on a bottle that you can find on a lot of shelves is going to be Calumet 15, around $100 in my area. For a allocated bottle, I'm going to recommend Calumet 16. A little bit harder to find, a little bit more money, between $130 and $150. And once again, it's going to be the same flavors as this, just dialed up a little bit. These are actually most likely made by the same company as Eagle Rare as well. These are under the umbrella of 1792, most likely. I know they don't say on here, but they're sourced from 1792. which is owned by Sazerac, which also owns Buffalo Trace. So they're under that umbrella. The flavors are not that dramatically off here, and the proof points are going to be fairly similar. This is 105, this is 106. And last up, my unicorn recommendation for this category is going to be Knob Creek 18. 18-year-olds, that's a little bit older, 100 proof, so the proof point's almost exact. And you know, this doesn't really taste like a Jim Beam product to me. It's been aged in a barrel for 18 years, so that those qualities you get off the yeast, they give it the peanut quality, they give it the caramel qualities, they're gone when you have it here at this age, I think. To me, this is more of like an oaky, fruity old bourbon that doesn't taste like a Jim Beam product. I like Jim Beam. I'm not talking smack by any means, but this is I think about as close as you can get to Eagle Rare 17. It is also ridiculously hard to find, but not as hard to find as Eagle Rare 17. Next up, my third favorite from the Buffalo Trace Antiques Collection lineup is going to be Thomas Handy. And this is going to be a barrel proof rye. So for a barrel proof rye, I think that it can be a challenge to find something that is really tasty, that's got some age on it, that's got some good flavors on it. But there's a shelf bottle that I think really does compare, and that's gonna be Willet 4-year rye. This is going to be 104.8 proof, this particular one. I know they vary from batch to batch. Rye spice, some of that herbal quality, like herbal tea, maybe even some mint and some, these guys often have some dill to them as well to me. So that guy's going to be my shelf out recommendation. My allocated recommendation is going to be Russell's Reserve single barrel rye, 104 proof. I know the proof points on these guys are much lower, but there's not a lot of 130 proof ryes out there. There just isn't. And I do think that one of the reasons that I often recommend Russell's and Wild Turkey as a recommendation for a substitution for Buffalo Trace is they do have a lot of the same flavor profiles as Buffalo Trace. You're always going to get bourbon vanilla. You're always going to get cherry off of Wild Turkey, off of Russell's. Those are flavors you're going to get off of almost every bottle of Buffalo Trace. You know, the other subtle differences are going to be there, but this is a great recommendation for a replacement bottle. And last up, a unicorn recommendation that's not quite as hard to find. I'm going to say Parker's Heritage Rye. I know, it's impossible to find, but it's not quite as hard to find as the Buffalo Trace Antiques Collection version. So that's going to be my recommendation. The one that I had, I think, was this close. In fact, when we had it in the blind, Marco picked the Parker's Heritage ahead of the Handy. I picked the Handy ahead of the Parker's Heritage. But next up, my second favorite from the Buffalo Trace Antiques Collection lineup is George T. friggin' Stagg. Great bottles. They are of the best of bourbon, the best that bourbon has to offer out there. And so it's hard to find comparisons, but I got a few. I can do this. I'm going to say a Russell's Private Selection for a shelf bottle. Now, I know these aren't available everywhere. In fact, now that the word has gotten out of how good they are, they're getting harder to find. You used to be able to walk into a lot of stores and they would just sit there. But unfortunately, people know how good they are now, and now they are flying off shelves. And they've also tapped into a specific region of the rick houses right now that is just really delivering these honey barrels that are just so good. So if you see these in your area, buy them, don't pass on them. Next up, allocated bottle recommendation to replace it. It's pretty straightforward. Stagg Jr. Going to be the same juice as George T. Stagg, younger. George T. Stagg is going to be about 15 years old, and these are 8 to 10, they say. Grab a Stagg Jr. instead of a George T. Stagg if you can't find George T. Stagg. I get it, these are hard to find, but we're talking about allocated products here. So this is a decent alternative for a BTAC bottle because, once again, we're talking about allocated bottles here. These are already hard enough to find. And last up, for a unicorn recommendation, I'm going to say D.H. Taylor Barrel Proof. Now, I think these are often a little bit better than the Stagg Jr. releases from the year. I've only had a couple of them, but the ones I've had are Stagg Jr. is here, E.H. Taylor Barrel Proof is here, and then GTS is here. So as close as you can get to a GTS is going to be an E.H. Taylor Barrel Proof. That's as close as you're going to get. These are also unicorns. I understand that. But if you want to get as close as you can without having to find a GTS, that's the way to go. Last up, my favorite from the Buffalo Trace Antiques collection lineup is WLW, William LaRue Weller. This is a barrel-proof version of Pappy Van Winkle. So the word is out there at how good this is. It's probably in a couple years going to probably be more hard to find than Pappy, because I think real bourbon fans know what it is and they know how good it is, and it is the best bourbon in the world. If you taste it, it's one that will always live up to expectations. It's just so good. But I can give a shelf recommendation for you, because as close as you can get that you can buy on shelves, I'm gonna go ahead and say Fiddler, Georgia Heartwood ASW. Is it as good as William LaRue Weller? No way. But for buying a bottle that you can find on the shelf, this is as close as I've found. A bottle that I can walk into my local liquor store and buy any day. That's as close as you can get. A allocated bottle, I'm gonna say my blend. I'm gonna go ahead and go with Prudent WLW. So how do you make this? You're going to take 2 parts Maker's Wood Finishing Series 01. So BRT 01, FAE 01, one of the older ones. Why the 01s? Well, the 01s are finished in American oak and the 02s are finished in French oak. And we want to have American oak on here. So of 01 Maker's Mark Wood Finishing Series, 2 parts, to 1 part Larceny Barrel Proof. So this particular one here is going to be 2 parts Maker's FAE 01 to 1 part Larceny Barrel Proof C9. Sorry. To 1 part Larceny Barrel Proof A122, so last year's A. And then I threw a barrel spiral in there and I let it go until it started to get some nice dark rich color, and I tasted it to make sure it wasn't getting over oaked. When I got to a good place, I pulled that spiral out and this is what I was left with, and this is pretty darn close. Is it as good as WLW? No, but it is really good. Last up, the recommendation that I would say, as close as you can get to a bottle of William LaRue Weller, and I'm going to look like a crazy person because it's not a wheated bourbon, but as close as you can get to WLW without paying for WLW, is blend straight from the barrel. Why? The Buffalo Trace cherry on here and on William LaRue Weller is really intense. The proofs are very similar. They keep the wheated mash bill and the high rye mash bill. Barrel entry proofs are around the same. The Buffalo Trace yeast strain is where I think a lot of the flavor in Buffalo Trace comes from. It's why their ryes taste like their wheated bourbons. The yeast is really what we're getting in flavor. And I think this is as close as you're gonna get. Yes, it's also very difficult to find. It's a lot easier to get your hands on than a WLW, trust me, because I've tried. Drinking buddies, those are my 3 recommendations for alternatives to each bottle of the BTAC lineup. Let me know what you think in the comments. Tell me some bottles that you think might be also comparable to the BTAC lineup that are a little easier to find, or a lot easier to find, or just sitting on shelves. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next one.